Hi and welcome to another episode, and what we've got here is Super Retro-Cade by retrobit, and they say it's the ultimate home arcade and it comes with over 90 games. Now this was sent over to me by inapproarcade over on Twitch. They're individually called Arcade Ren and Inappropriate Coffee Cup. Man and wife team, very nice people. They do all their Twitch stuff. Sometimes they play around with one of these, and they reckoned I should have one, so they've nicely sent me one over. There is going to be an EU version of this coming out on the 6th of November. The box art on the back is a little bit different, and it has a few different games on it, it seems. And sadly, that version doesn't have a power supply unit. This one does, but it's an American one, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, some of the games that are on the back of here, or it says that are on the console, are different from the ones that are on the box art for the other one, for the EU version. So we'll see how that goes. But really, it's not something to worry about, and I'll explain that in a moment. But yeah, there is a fair few different ones. This is a version 1.1 from the American import. If you're going to import one and save yourself, I don't know, £5-6 or something like that, make sure you get a 1.1 at least, because it's slightly better. That's why there's an update. Right, so let's have a look on the front again. So it has this little panel that opens up, and you get to see a fair few other games. Hope there's some ones there that you recognise. You know, it makes out it looks like that, and it doesn't, which is kind of funny, but you get a few screenshots on the front there. And then on the side, it talks about the features, which is basically you get over 90 games, you get an AV and HDMI compatible, you actually get a HDMI cable, which is 6 foot long, which is, what is it, 1.83 m-ish, 2 6-button game pads, which are compatible with PC and Macs, 10 foot being, oh, what's that, just over 3 meters. Easy to navigate. It's got an SD slot to save and transfer game progress, compatible with official or third-party USB controllers, and then it says it again in a couple of other languages. So at the back again, as I say, there's a few games on here that are a bit different than the EU one. I'll highlight the ones on here. Well, basically I'll show you a screenshot of this one and a screenshot of the other one, and I'll highlight the different games. As I said, 1.1, it reckons you've got to be at least 10 years old to play it. I think it depends on the game. I would say from UK point of view, it's probably PG, because you want to, there is fighting games, there is violence in that way, but come on, it's early arcade games, there's no real blood and guts in most of the games. You know, as a parent, you decide what your kids are playing, if you're sat there playing with them, because there is maybe a couple of games you wouldn't want them to play. But right, let's get into this thing now, because there's nothing too fancy on the bottom. It just says Retro-Cade, and they've gone really sticky down with different flaps. Let's get the manual out first. So it's more of a leaflet thing. We'll have a look at that in a moment. I'll pull this tray out. Thankfully no polystyrene. Still a lot of banging around. Let's get the cardboard box out of the way. So before we start looking at this, let's have a look at the manual. It is just, you know, a couple of pages of A4 sort of thing, folded over and stapled together, but it's kind of unusual to read the American ways of doing things in the manuals, because there's laws that they have to be careful about over there, but basically, you know, blah, 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 be careful, you might get cancer, you know, get up and move around like you should do, you know, don't plug the adapter in the wall and lick your fingers, you know, that sort of silly stuff. Doesn't say that, but you know, you get the idea. Every 60 minutes, get up and walk around for 15 minutes. Yeah, could cause problems. Stop playing if, well, basically you're having problems, which makes sense. But I just find it funny that it has to be in the manual to warn you. Right, so anyway, it says power button, a couple of USB ports, air vents, SD slot, HDMI port, AV port, which basically is composite or composite, depending on where in the world you are when you say that. DC port, air vent, again, because it's one on the other side. Select buttons on the controllers, D-pad, start button, operation buttons, BA, YX, LR, sort of as standard, but their way of doing it. Explains how to connect it, blah, 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 blah. Precautions when using a Super Retro-Cade adapter. Use only the Super Retro-Cade AC adapter included. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. When in use, basically make sure you turn it off at the wall before turning it off. Make sure your TV's set to a nice picture. Operating the Super Arcade console, make sure the power is off. Plug in your Super Arcade controller into the respective controller slots on the front of the controller, on the front of the console, sorry, and turn on the power. Press down on the power button located on the top of the console until you hear a click sound. Right, and then this is the kind of menu you get. And then it goes in and it explains this, that, and the other, which I'll be doing to you in a moment. But yes, the SD card is for save states only. Yes, we'll talk about that in a moment as well. And blah, 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 blah. So yes, there's lots of things to talk about in a moment. And troubleshooting, basically, if it's broken, read this bit. And then if it's really broken, contact them. And the back page is empty. Right, so very informative. Read that through cover to cover, of course, when you get your own. So let's get over to the console itself. Right, first things first. Power supply unit. This is an American one, and as I said, in the EU boxes, you're not going to be getting one. But it's 5 volt at 1 amp. And it has a barrel size. Now what I did... Now, it is possible to use one of these fancy travel socket things. This one, you know, is got an amp, a fuse inside, which is no real use really, because if it's going to go bang, it's going to go bang. But you can plug in, well, as you can see, you can plug in a European socket, you can plug in other sockets from around the world as well. And one of sort of shared bit is you can plug in an American one, and it works. Now, the thing is, you can't normally do that with power supply units, but this particular power supply unit, with its tiny little bit of writing, it actually says 100 volts to 240 volts at 50 or 60 hertz, which happens to be pretty much, you can plug that anywhere in the world pretty much, as long as you've got an adapter that makes it fit. So that's why here in the UK, I can risk using it like this, but I don't personally like using these very often, and especially not for long periods of time. So even though the manual tells you only use that power supply unit, I on the other hand bought my own 5 volt 3 amp one, because actually it's cheaper to buy the 3 amp version than it is compared to stuff, and the barrel is exactly the same size. I will put a link to this on the UK, on my description for the Amazon.co.uk. I'm not affiliated with them yet, at least. So, you know, I don't get any kickbacks anyway, but it would be nice that you sort of like get this sort of one if you're here in the UK, and get the equivalent if you're in the EU. Obviously, you'll have different pins, but match up the barrel size and you'll be fine. I'll put the details of the barrel size in the description as well, because right this minute I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'll make doubly sure that it's the correct size when I put it in the description. Right, so that's how I'm going to power it anyway. I use such things to power my Mister, and it works perfectly fine. I've had that same power supply unit sort of thing for over a year, and nothing's gone badly wrong. So, well, nothing's gone wrong at all actually, but there we go. The console itself, it's a tiddly little thing. It seems to have a few screws in it, which I may pop it open at some point, but not right this minute in this video. So we've got the AC, we've got a composite, we've got HDMI, and we've got an SD card. Some air vents, which a bit of a strange place to put an air vent when hot air goes upwards. I've got a vent at the back as well, but again, there's no fan inside here, so not too sure. I think it's just to let some heat out at least. And of course, just USB to standard USB ports at the front. And then move on to the gamepad. So extra plastic for no apparent reason, which, you know, we should be trying to look after the planet somewhat. So why the gamepads are in plastic, I don't know, because someone has to touch them to put them inside the bags anyway, so what difference does it is if it just sat inside? More ties, your 3 meters or 10 foot of cable, and we have 2 of them. I don't need to take the second one out because it's only me. And then a HDMI cable, which again I don't need to take out because I've got plenty of HDMI cables. So let's put the power supply unit back in the box because I'm not going to be needing that. Oh, gamepad's wanting to go for a jump. And we'll put all that to the side. Creak, creak, creak. And let's get it plugged in. So what we can do here is select the games. So let's press, we can either press X for filter. There we go. We can decide if we want to see all the games, we can see NES or SNES or Genesis. Which maybe on the EU one it's going to change it to say Mega Drive. Don't know. Change it by publisher, you can change it by name. But let's just sort it by arcade for now. You can change it by genre. Well, it was sorted by shoot 'em ups, wasn't it? And we can make a favorite. So we just press B for back for now. We can press, let's just actually start the game because I want to show you something. If you just start the game, there's an image of it being all widescreen. We can start the game, it's pointing out it's a 2-player. You can load a save state, you can make it part of your favorites, or you can return to main menu. So let's start the game. So here's a game which is known as a vertical shoot 'em up, or shoom, or whatever you want to call them. Anyway, you can press settings to add credits, and you can press start to start the game. Now, doesn't this look awful in widescreen? Yeah. So we can shoot away and everything like that, but it's not very nice. Let's make it look a lot prettier. So we can press select and start at the same time, and we get this menu. And obviously what you can do here is load and save a state. You can do that as well to an SD card if you got it in there. I believe it has to be formatted to FAT32. Change the game volume itself. You can store the game defaults, or you can turn to the main menu. Now let's return to the main menu, because one thing we need to do for plenty of these games, if not all of them, is press, since we're using HDMI, that's the thing, since we're using HDMI. If you're using composite directly to a 4:3 CRTV, you know, you're not going to be bothered. It'll be automatically in the correct mode. But when you're using HDMI, you have to change some settings. And to do that, you press select, and then you go over video, and then you highlight original size. Now, to me, why not just do it original size the whole time? As in to be able to select all of the games and to say, right, all of them original size. Because now you have to do this pretty much on every game if you're using HDMI. It's a one-off event, you don't have to do it every time, but it's a one-off event for each game. So let's go back into 1942 again, start the game again, and this time it's in the correct ratio, which makes it a lot more playable. So let's get some coins in and talk about how nice the gamepad is to use. For my hands, it's a little bit on the small side. Not that I've got giant hands or anything like that, but it is a little bit on the big side. The D-pad actually feels nice. It's controllable enough. You know, as in the plane's going where I want it to go. Good, bad, or indifferent, but it's going where I want it to go. I can press A buttons to do that. All the buttons feel the same. The shoulder buttons or the bumper buttons are a bit stiff, but you know you're pressing them. So yeah, as a little gamepad, it's workable. Personally, because I've used other 8-bit gamepads, I think I might be getting some more of theirs. You know, like the wireless Mega Drive stroke Genesis gamepad with the 6 buttons all on the front. I think I'll probably go for that because it sort of fits the arcade system a bit more. Doing that. I realise you can have these SNES games and things on here which would fit this format more, but I've also got other wireless gamepads that I like. That there's people who follow this channel, you'll know that I like my wireless gamepads. I'm not highly hitting and knocking these gamepads. To get you going, yes, definitely. It's a gamepad that's workable, but I can see in my hands they might cramp up, you know, after a few hours of gameplay. It's just not quite big enough. The flat, it has that angled sort of idea you're going to get it, but then there's no bulge around the back really to compensate on actually holding them. But I don't want to knock it too much because, you know, for the price you get 2 gamepads. You can't say that for all the other sort of mini consoles that you can get. So let's go back to a different game. So we press select and start at the same time, and again you end up with this menu. So let's have a look at the button mapping though, because one thing that's interesting on this system is that you personally can decide what you want the buttons to do. So if the fire, you'd rather have the, I don't know, the rapid fire button is on Y and just a normal shooty button is on B, you can move them around, or if you want it the other way around, again you can swap them around. Right now I'm not going to bother, but you know, it is an option. We press B to come away from there, and the volume, sound put out, game volume, sound output on or off by the looks of it. Not too sure why you would want to turn the sound output off. That's an unusual option. And of course, if you want to change the game defaults back to normal, you can select that one. So return to the main menu. Let's have a look at a different game again. One of my favourite games as a kid was R-Type, so let's go find that one. See, we have R-Type, R-Type 2, and all the way over here, because that's one thing you can't scroll. As in, I press right there, it doesn't automatically go down to the next row and pick the next game. That'd be kind of nice if it did, but it doesn't. You have to go down and select it. So R-Type 2, but then if you go all the way down, you've got Super R-Type, which obviously was on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. So let's go back to the arcade version of the game. Oh, I forgot, didn't I? For the very first time playing, I need to press select, video, original size, confirm, come back out, select the game, start the game. Because none of these games you're going to want to play stuff, so it's booting up, so let's get some coins in. Press start. Zap. Yeah, it plays nice, it sounds nice. The only trouble I have is gamepads really, but that's just me being very picky. But now let's talk about what else you can do with that SD card, because I'm going to be playing around with that next time in another video. So let me go back to just my talking hands. Yes, well, the one thing you can do with it is get yourself an SD card of varying sizes. I've got a 16GB one, and with this you can mess around and put on extra games for the Retro-Cade, and you can also have little graphics like you would do the thing. So I'm going to show how to do that next time around, because as you know, I don't always show you how to move your own games on, but I will show you how to do one so that you get an idea on how to do the rest of them. But that is an interesting little thing that it does do. It doesn't mention it in the manual, but you can do that, and that means though the varying differences between the American version of the box, or the console, sorry, or the EU version of the console, who cares? If you happen to own the ROMs, you can mess around and stick them on. But as I say, I'll show you how to do all that in a episode at a later time. But as always, happy gaming!